because of my hearing loss. I was abused by my dad, bullied by my classmates. Daisy saved me. She pulled me out of the mud, got close to me, protected me, promised that with her around, no one would bully me. Everyone envied me for having a guardian angel, a protector falling from the sky. I used to think I found redemption, until I overheard. Isn't our Daisy a great actress? Look at that deaf kid thinking he's the hero of some redemption story. She'll keep it down. Daisy glanced at me casually. Why bother? He can't hear anyway. She didn't know. My ears got better. I could hear again. Locked in an empty classroom by malice. A few guys stood in front of me, laughing. I touched my hearing aid on the right side. It might have been hit when they shoved me. Sounds around began to blur. The guy in charge slapped my face, mocking, "Edward, do you know what you did wrong? You dared to mess with Sunny. She's Mike's girlfriend. Deaf and still hitting on girls, you're something else." Their hits made me stumble. I only steadied myself by grabbing the shelf behind me. I brushed back my hair blocking my sight, kept my eyes down, said nothing. My damp school uniform clung to me, sending shivers through my skin in the early fall air. It wasn't that I didn't want to reply, but nothing I'd say would be the answer he wanted. A week ago, Sunny from class 3 suddenly showed up at my classroom door. She asked me out for lunch. I turned her down. People around laughed hard. She felt humiliated and spat at me. Not long after, Mike came after me. He scribbled nasty words all over my desk, locked me in an empty, abandoned classroom during lunch break, and ambushed me on my way home with a group of delinquents. I struggled, fought back, but was overwhelmed. They said they liked seeing me scared and helpless. So the more I struggled, the more excited they felt. They dumped a bucket of dirty water over my head. Mike laughed heartily, satisfied with my pitiful state. He sneered, pulling out a utility knife from his pocket. "You use this face to act all week, right? What if this pretty face got scarred? How'd you charm girls then?" He walked toward me with that smile. Other guys grabbed me, stopping my struggle. I watched the blade edge closer in panic. Just as I closed my eyes, bracing for pain, the door was violently kicked open from outside. Daisy appeared then. Honestly, I don't quite remember the details. Just being knocked down. All those hands pulling my hair, slapping me, and then through a haze, light broke through the door, cutting into the moral abyss. Like light knifing through tree shadows, falling to the ground. Daisy stood in that glow. Nonchalant, lazy yet flamboyant. She kicked open the door, came in, glanced at me on the ground curled up, and then at Mike and the guys. That beautiful curve to her lips, no smile to her eyes. I don't know what she said to Mike, just watched her lips move. Mike's face drained of blood immediately. He trembled, bowing, nodding to Daisy, as if apologizing, begging. Daisy just gave him a sidelong glance. He instantly seemed relieved, dragged his buddies and fled, leaving me alone to face her uneasily. Daisy was tall, imposing. The classroom felt emptily quiet, overly so. She said something, I think, but my hearing aid had fallen off during the push and shove, so I tried to guess from her lip movements. But I can't read lips, so I got anxious. When Daisy knelt in front of me, reaching toward my face, I flinched from reflex. Her hand stopped mid-air, paused, then continued forward, bypassing me to pick up my hearing aid. Amid my daze, she clumsily put it back on. Faint static crackled, and I heard her voice, sweet, slightly amused. "Are you scared of me?" It wasn't an accusation, more like a gentle rule. But the answer was undeniably yes, I was, because everyone knew Daisy was not to be messed with in our school. I feared offending her, inviting more troubles, even though we were in the same class, had been classmates for 2 years. Yet we were worlds apart. She was good-looking, from a great family, had lots of friends, a star from the start. And me, a laughingstock. My dad once showed up at school, held me by my collar, swearing at me for being an ungrateful brat, telling me I should help make money instead of studying. Daisy, rebellious and loud. I was timid, insecure, withdrawn, different. 3 months ago, my dad's slap left my ears deaf, making everyone in class push me aside. To unaware high schoolers, my dad was a terror, a vicious middle-aged man, so they feared anything connected to me. Even the kind ones are scared of rabid loners. I got it. But when Daisy's fingers brushed the bruise on my cheek, frowned, asked why I didn't fight back, I was shocked at my own sarcasm. Not everyone is born a rich heiress. Then I fell silent. I'd always heard people gossip that Daisy had a bad temper, breaking someone's arm or rib. I thought she'd get mad, had prepared for another beating, already used to it. But she didn't. She lazily glanced at me, snarked, got some spine but use it in the wrong place. And this is why even rabbits bite when pushed. Daisy said, I'm a double-standard jerk. Pick the easy targets. Edward, you just count on me liking you. Always snapping at me. Think if one day I ignore you, you'd cry. She said this after following me for 3 months. Daisy ditched school often. Her family had private tutors. Her presence was just a formality. After rescuing me, I thought that'd be the end of our ties. So I swallowed the incident, never shared it with anyone. Not that I had anyone to tell. So 3 days later, during the early class, when she walked into the classroom and passed by my seat, she frowned and asked, why hasn't the cut on your face healed? She managed to grab everyone's attention and directed it at us. Daisy was probably used to this kind of spotlight, but I wasn't. In fact, I felt pretty anxious about it. That feeling shot through the roof when I realized Daisy was coming to school every day and always seemed to end up in my line of sight. I noticed she was following me. Wherever I went, she trailed behind, keeping a not too close, not too far distance. I took small steps and she took big ones, making her look a bit lazy. But her presence was so strong. I couldn't figure out what she wanted. I couldn't bring myself to ask. Just thinking about the day she helped me put on my hearing aid, her hand gripping my ear, I stopped stepping towards her right away. Forget it. Initiating anything would be the death of an introvert like me. I felt like I was about to crumble under everyone's stares. Luckily, that evening, heading home from school, I got ambushed on my way back. When I saw Daisy watching those thugs with a sly grin, eyes filled with excitement, I finally got it. She seemed to be protecting me. I worried Daisy was just toying with me. Word around school was that these rich kids, bored and loaded, loved playing games with people's lives. Like betting on chasing guys, swapping boyfriends, and racing. All I wanted was to study in peace and escape everything here as fast as I could. So I was scared Daisy was seeing me as a plaything. I started to avoid her, but ironically, my avoidance became something others envied. During lunch, my seatmate Jason suddenly asked, Edward, is Daisy chasing you? I quickly shook my head to deny it. Before I could explain, he turned sour. If you don't want to talk, fine. Who cares anyway? At the time, I didn't think much of it. Really thought I'd said something wrong. Later, I realized he wasn't after an answer. He was gunning for a juicy story. This was only the third thing he'd said to me since we became seatmates. First was, why is it you? Second was, gross, stay away from me, don't touch me. Yet he acted like not updating him on my relationship with Daisy was the biggest offense. Jason had a thing for Daisy, but he was terrified of being mocked if others found out. So he kept quiet. The more he pretended it didn't matter, the more he rebelled. He loved gossiping about who confessed to Daisy and got rejected, mocking their love-addled brains and claiming he had a clear head. I was no exception. He spread his frustration to everyone. If someone asked, what's up, Jason, who ticked you off? He'd dive into the whole tale. Gossip ran wild, until someone couldn't help but ask Daisy, no way, Daisy, I heard you're chasing Edward. True or false? Every ear perked up in that moment. Jason looked like he was enjoying the show, ready to see me humiliated. This scene had played out so many times before. Girls who tried to confess to me ended up backing out, silenced by laughter. No one ever stood up for me. No one ever chose me for real. But Jason didn't expect, and neither did I, when Daisy stood in front of me, expressionless, and knocked on his desk. "Pack your stuff and leave," she said. Jason was stunned, face going pale. After he left, Daisy sat beside me, scanning the onlookers, with a warning in her eyes. "From now on, anything about Edward goes through me. You want him for something, come see me first." Silence. Like the day I went deaf. The world got so quiet. 3 seconds later, the class exploded. Whistles, cheers, and teasing nearly blew the roof off. The noise was so loud, it sent a sharp hum through my hearing aid. I winced and instinctively tried to cover my ears, but Daisy's slender, dry hands beat me to it. She took off my hearing aid, and I saw her lips moving. The shapes were hard to make out, but when I looked into her beautiful peach blossom eyes, I saw a small reflection of myself. I couldn't help but ask Daisy, "What do you really want?" She raised an eyebrow, looked at me, trying to see if I truly didn't know, or if I was just playing dumb. Finally, she laughed softly, helpless, and replied, "Just think of it as me liking you, trying to win you over." And from that day, she did just that. Expensive-looking breakfasts, bouquets and gifts, plus her protection had turned into people calling her my guardian. Nobody dared mess with me anymore, just like nobody messed with her. And I had to admit, a bit shamefully, that having Daisy around was really helpful. Since her announcement, nobody pushed me from behind anymore. My locker and desk were spotless. No sudden surprises, dead animals, or missing textbooks. Life got plain and ordinary overnight. Even Mike, who always threatened to mess with me, and his buddies vanished from my sight. Because of Daisy, my classmates were much more cordial, as if the past hostility and bullying were just a bad dream. But everything changed after Daisy and I had our first argument. By then, we were practically inseparable. She tagged along. I couldn't shake her off. Whenever we passed by her friends, they'd tease, "Daisy, is this the legendary brother-in-law?" She'd playfully retort, "Go play your badminton. Quit yapping." In the days leading up to the midterm exams, rumors about me started spreading around the school. I figured Edward was just playing hard to get. The way he acted, he might have already slept with Daisy and was just faking this whole "I'm rejecting her" thing. Honestly, I'd heard worse, so I was good at just ignoring it. Never expected Daisy to get that mad, though. She usually acted so laid back around me, like nothing really bothered her. When she grabbed that guy by the neck, pushed him in front of me, and made him kneel by smashing his leg with a chair, right in front of everyone, I was totally shocked by the intensity in her eyes. Daisy held onto his collar from behind. "Do you know how to say sorry?" she spat. "Did your mom never tell you where you came from?" With blood all over his face, the guy apologized to me, scared out of his mind. The next day, Daisy had to apologize in front of the whole school. She lazily read from some script that someone else probably wrote for her, and just as she was about to finish, she boldly declared, "I did nothing wrong. What's there to even apologize for?" The principal turned green with anger but couldn't do anything about her. After all, her family donated the new school building. That night, Daisy took me to an alley and asked in an almost sad way, "Edward, when are you going to make us official?" The principal asked me what we are, and I couldn't even defend myself for standing up for you. Never been this humiliated. Her dark eyes filled with tears. Like if I said anything harsh, she'd turn into a sad little kitten. But I still turned her down. I looked down, avoiding her gaze, and calmly said, "I'm not planning to date yet. Plus, I don't want to be part of your game. Daisy's gone through boyfriends since the start of school. I don't believe a player will ever settle down, let alone for me. So I wasn't going to take that chance. Maybe try someone else, Daisy." We didn't part on good terms. I had my concerns and unease. Daisy had her pride and dignity. So she stopped following me around, hardly even showed up at school. That day, she was probably so mad she could cry. She told me through gritted teeth, "Edward, If that's what you think of me, fine. I get it. I won't bug you anymore. And with that, she turned and left, not looking back. I felt relieved, thinking this was good. She had a carefree life with family backups. I, on the other hand, was insecure and sensitive, and I knew the only way to change my life was to seize the opportunities right in front of me. We just didn't belong in the same world. Without Daisy shadowing me, life went back to its routine, school, home, repeat. Just that the weird dynamic between us wasn't unnoticed. Jason started making snarky comments about how I'd lost my touch. Former bullying and taunts came back too. I silently endured it. I was used to it. We were just school kids, after all, always easier than dealing with family. I kept up with my routine, studying, doing homework, taking tests, until I got pushed down the stairs and hurt my leg. Daisy gave me a cold look from outside the infirmary, and the next day, I heard about a guy being sent to the hospital after drunks beat him until his ribs broke. I sat holding the infirmary's blanket for a while, then buried myself deep inside. Daisy started following me again, though from a distance. After assuring herself I was safe, she disappeared once more. She didn't expect calm at school, but almost met her breaking point when I nearly died at home instead. When she saw me taken away by an ambulance, she looked like a caged beast, her eyes wild and red. When I woke up, there she was, sitting silently by my bed, full of regret. In a low voice, she asked, I was gone for just a little while. Who did this to you? There was so much anger in her voice that her hand shook when touching my injuries. I didn't say anything because I didn't know how to tell her that it was my own father who did this. My dad doesn't have much to him. He's like a textbook example of mediocrity, a middle-aged man with a thin wage. He brags outside, drinks at home, and when frustrated, he'd hit my mom. After my mom died from illness, it became my turn. Nothing much else to say. People have asked me countless times why I don't call the police or run away. All I can do is tell them over and over, thank you for your concern, Mr. and Mrs. But I've tried it all. I don't want to get hit harder for it. Knowing Daisy's temper, I seriously warned her, don't think about tangling with him. You can't reason with a psycho. If Felix knew how rich Daisy's family was, he'd definitely try to squeeze money out of her. It's hard to explain my feelings now. Maybe obsessed, maybe more on the extreme side. I've become numb to the idea that I'd rather let Felix kill me than see him get any undeserved money. Daisy said nothing, just looked down. I thought she agreed. But barely 2 weeks passed, and one crazy night, Daisy kicked my door open, breaking through my last layer of pretense. I thought she'd start a fight, but she just hugged me, shielding me with her back from all the blows. As the spring wind kissed the barren land and poets got drunk at dawn, at that moment, I thought I'd found my solace. When I applied medicine to Daisy's wounds sitting on the flower bed, I did it deliberately hard. She winced in pain. Feel it now, huh? What were you thinking back there? She just chuckled, sporting bruises on her so-called beautiful face under the moonlight, looking a little silly. I may be rich, but I'm not stupid. Why would I give your dad money? I rolled my eyes, looking at her sharp profile under the endless night. The girl's sharp brows looked wild, her pretty face carefree. She leaned against the wall leisurely, light from the corridor window sliced down on her, much like when she walked toward me backlit in the classroom. Suddenly, I felt impulsive, an urge to see if there's another answer to this equation I thought we had different paths on. Since we're variables anyway, there's a certain variance. If you can cross the valley, can't you also reach the peak? Thinking that, I turned around. In Daisy's confused gaze, I gently straightened her head and seriously asked, Daisy, if I told you I've decided to take the risk, would you want to be with me? Her face, marked with an injury, looked almost comical with her pupils contracting suddenly. But her excitement couldn't be contained when she jumped up, shaking my shoulders, her voice full of zeal. Edward, I will cherish you. With me around, no one will bully you. Daisy always knew how to give me emotional support. Just like she said, after we confirmed our relationship, she treated me incredibly well. Everyone said I found a solid support and envied my luck in meeting Daisy, becoming her boyfriend, and getting her boundless affection. The story seemed like a redemption for me until a month before the college entrance exams. I got a text from Daisy, saying she had booked a hotel to celebrate my birthday. Wanting to surprise her, I got there early. Unexpectedly, right as I reached the door, I heard laughter and conversations inside. Still, our Daisy can act, someone joked. Look how moved that deaf guy is. Just a couple of hero rescues, and he thinks he's the main character in a redemption arc. Yeah, we lost the bet and accept it. Daisy, what's your next plan? You're not really going to stay with him, are you? This game's gone on long enough. Be careful. You might not be able to shake him off later. Right, Daisy, what's the deal? Someone asked. She'll quiet down. Edward's here. Someone noticed me at the door, and the room went silent. Everyone turned to look, including Daisy. Upon hearing my name, she froze, turning abruptly, panic flashing across her face. She glanced at my ears, saw I wasn't wearing hearing aids, and relaxed, exhaling slowly. The person speaking before laughed boisterously. No way. Daisy, are you scared of him? Daisy smiled, gestured for me to come over, and, as I followed her lead, she held my hand, looking at me with tender eyes. She didn't know I could hear now. A week ago, my hearing aids broke. The doctor said it would take a while to get new ones. I experienced a few days of silence until I noticed I could hear faint sounds while showering a few nights ago. After a checkup, I was told it was a sign of healing. When I first lost my hearing after being beaten, my dad refused to get me treatment. It was a long while before a kind policewoman, who couldn't stand it, got me a pair of hearing aids and said I could pay her back when I had the means. Sadly, my dad later scammed her out of money, leaving me with just her payment details as she was pulled away from my life by her family. I thought I'd always be cut off from the world's sounds. I never expected such a surprise. I held on to my hopes, quietly letting the sounds of the world wash over me once more. I wanted to surprise Daisy, but what I found instead was this scene. Sure enough, no matter how random, an incorrect process leads to a skewed answer. And the wrong answer must be corrected. So I looked at Daisy. In her confused gaze, I let go of her hand, smiling as I spoke. It must have been tough for Daisy to act with me for so long. Daisy's face drained of color instantly, like she had seen a ghost. She stood stiffly, her pupils dilating and her lashes trembling. After a long pause, she spoke, her voice hoarse. You can hear now? I looked at her coldly. Yeah, I can hear. Perfect timing. Huh? Daisy stammered in panic. Edward, I can explain. I can explain everything. I'm sorry, Edward. I just wanted to save face. You know, I didn't mean it, I was just talking. Didn't mean what? I interrupted, my voice laced with bitterness or maybe sarcasm. Didn't mean to pretend to save me? Or didn't mean to make me part of your betting game? I had told her before, I can't afford to play around. I'm exhausted. Living is tiring. Busy is tiring. Studying is tiring. I told her, Daisy, I can't afford mistakes right now. I want to change my fate. I don't want to end up like my dad, living my life through someone else. I want to work hard. I want to succeed. I want to make money. My biggest dream is financial independence. So I won't have much time for you. If you're just in it for fun, please let me know. Respect my choice. I remember her complaining then, feeling wronged, that I was always busy, never had time for her. She said, but I have money. What's mine is yours. You can still be independent. Do you not like using my money? Are you treating me like a stranger, Edward? Back then, I had a feeling I might have made the wrong choice on impulse. Reality confirmed it. My one deviation from my plan was a mistake. I broke up with Daisy. She said it didn't count because I decided unilaterally. She started to cling, to follow, to try everything, blocking me on my way home, pleading with me, coaxing me, publicly apologizing and admitting fault in front of the whole school. Edward, I'm dropping my pride. I know I was wrong. Please don't leave me. I shouldn't have taken that bet. I never meant for this to happen. I truly like you, Edward. Can you give me another chance? She handed me her phone. This is what I planned for you. After exams, I wanted to take you abroad to study. I remembered the future you wanted. I prepared everything. I looked at her phone. hearing the crowd's whispers around us, and I finally lost my composure. Daisy, using others' pain and misfortune as a bet, playing hero, feeling good having someone worship you. How fulfilling is that? I said, "Stop following me." And as I turned to leave, at that moment, Daisy's eyes filled with tears and finally overflowed. Her hands were trembling a bit as she reached out to grab me. Her eyes showed an uncontrollable fear as she cried, begging me, "Please, Edward, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. Just give me another chance. Okay? I promise I'll make things right." She sobbed like a child, clutching her chest like she couldn't breathe. But I didn't believe her anymore. I pried her hand off me, telling her, "Daisy, your game is over. Let's save some dignity for both of us." Daisy wouldn't give up. She was always pleading with me to reconcile, even though she was quite the popular one at school. Everyone was talking about how the wild heart had been tamed by me. She waited outside my house every day, just saying she wanted to see me. I ignored her and focused on my studies instead. When Daisy realized waiting wasn't working, she started trying to meet me in different ways. Once, after she was drunk, she stumbled toward me, trying to touch me, but I stepped aside and avoided her. Coldly, I said, "Can you stop grossing me out?" She was stunned by my words, let go, rubbed her face, and hoarsely asked me, "Edward, what do I have to do for you to forgive me? Can we not break up?" She kept repeating those two sentences like a kid who couldn't understand what they did wrong. I met her increasingly wet eyes and responded coldly, "Daisy, don't appear in front of me again. Don't make me hate you." But she still didn't give up. She started threatening me, saying she'd cut her wrists or jump off a building. I still ignored her. It was probably the only time someone had seen through her lies during her lifetime of games, and she'd lost all face. A week before finals, she stood at my desk, asking one last time, "Edward, do you really not want me anymore?" Without looking up, I nodded. I heard that when Daisy left that day, her eyes were red, and she seemed utterly defeated. My hand paused as I gripped my pen. Then I continued writing my papers. Later, after finals at the graduation party, everything seemed to be left behind in the name of forgiving and forgetting. People who never approached me before were being overly polite and distant. Some even mentioned Daisy trying to convince me she really liked you. Her reasons weren't right, but you didn't have to be so harsh, did you? Yeah, that's Daisy. So many guys were envious of you. Won't you give her another chance? I just smiled, clinking their glasses without responding. I had already given her chances. Forgiveness for a mistake wasn't the only opportunity. She had countless times to tell the truth while she played out her redemption act with me. But she chose to make that mistake, thinking I'm Daisy after all. She had a good family background and endless possibilities for the future. Her life was a game. A little trap of lies was not enough to make her bow her noble head. She liked me. I never denied that. Love at the moment is true. But apart from that, respect and consistency are difficult. A fleeting passion of a drifter doesn't last. She might turn back for me now, but she'd turn back for someone else in the future. That day, I finally heard the truth. She'd never even thought through a lie she didn't even respect enough to cover well. Love and adoration don't even come into play. Even if we hadn't broken up, the end would have been the same someday in the future. People don't like being deceived. From the moment she volunteered in this gamble, my uncompromising approach to love meant I couldn't bring myself to have any follow-up with her. After the results were out, I got my college acceptance letter. Daisy was sent abroad by her family. Over the years, though we were in the same class group chat, neither of us spoke there. Some attempted to organize reunions, but I didn't join. The funny thing is, I, who was once invisible in class, got mentioned often in those chats, with many laughing at their own youthful ignorance. They apologized for the past, hoping I wouldn't mind. I scrolled through and didn't bother reading everything, just turned off my phone without replying. When I got to college, I saved enough money from part-time jobs to hire a lawyer. When I learned all the conditions were right to sever ties with my guardian legally, I couldn't help but sit in a chair and cry. I handled all the paperwork, explained my situation to the college, and applied for financial aid. During this Felix tried to cause trouble, but I could ignore and counter everything. No more worrying about being sent back home after spending nights in a police station, listening to others persuading and educating Felix. The day I got my first job after college graduation, I visited my mom's grave. A small mound of earth in the countryside was her entire life. "Mom, see? I said I could rely on myself. You didn't divorce back then because you had no financial support to raise me. But I can support myself. Felix couldn't raise me well either. From now on, I'll take care of myself. You don't have to worry. Daisy, I wished we could have been partners working hard together, not just me being a support system for her." But she never understood that. Over the years, I saw Daisy a few times, both off and on campus, around the corner from the boys' dorm. She stood out, thinking I hadn't noticed her. But the whispers and glances of the boys around made her impossible to ignore. We met and spoke. We discussed the past and the turning points. When we parted, she cautiously asked, "So, there's no going back?" As I looked at her, stripped of her old confidence, I smiled and said, "Daisy, I was going to walk in the rain. You offered me an umbrella. But when we reached the fork in the road, you told me the rain was your doing, just to watch my reactions. How do I reconcile with my former self who trusted you without a doubt?" When Daisy left, she broke down, crying, claiming it was all just a playful side of her, nothing unforgivable. I didn't look back or answer. Life isn't a romance novel and people don't change their core nature. Even if she deeply likes me now, she is still the person who once treated me like a game. I heard later that every guy Daisy dated reminded people of me, a running joke among those aware of our history. So when a young man once came to me, nervously tugging at his pants hem, saying, "Mr. G, could you tell me about you and her?" I turned him down. I straightforwardly told him Daisy and I once had a history, but that was all high school stuff. It doesn't mean I have to mourn this relationship. I won't let it become a script for gossip. If someone tells you that Daisy, used you as a stand-in, they're dead wrong. Do you think that's what true love looks like? Nope. It's just her not being able to control herself but needing a reason to justify her behavior. Using my name to mess with someone else's feelings makes me feel unlucky. Just like why we broke up back then. Everyone thought it was because I exposed her lies. The real reason, though, was that I found out what she's really like. Someone who'd gamble with a guy's feelings. Even if she likes you for a moment, she won't love you forever. So, after we split, there were 8 years of little contact. Still, she always had boyfriends around. I wasn't surprised at all. Seeing Daisy again happened at my wedding. She brought a big red envelope and a jade bracelet as a gift. I kept the envelope but returned the bracelet. I told her, "Thanks for coming to my wedding." She was silent for a bit, like she just figured something out. She couldn't help but ask Edward, if I hadn't taken that bet back then, would I be the one standing here with you now? Looking at her still beautiful face, I remembered the girl from under that moonlit sky years ago. With a sense of release, I said, "Yeah, why not, Daisy? I've thought about that too. How could I not have thought about it? Someone like that, coming down like an angel, pulling me from the mud. She saved me, protected me, promised nobody would ever bully me again. Who wouldn't be moved? But then, it was that same person who told me it was all just a lie crafted for me. No one is born to save someone else. There's no sudden, inexplicable goodness. You always have to rely on yourself. Don't expect to get everything you want without putting in the effort. I tried. I gave it my all. So I have no regrets. Novels, after all, are just stories. No hero is going to drop from the sky and save you unconditionally. What we can do is always rely on ourselves. Daisy, thanks for being in my life. You're welcome, Edward.